Hi, this is Brad Linder with Liliputing, and this is an Acer Aspire V5 11.6-inch notebook. It's a thin and light laptop, weighs just about 3 pounds, it's pretty portable, and it measures about 1.1 inches thick. It's a little too thick to be considered an ultrabook, and it has a hard drive instead of a solid-state disk, so it doesn't qualify to be an ultrabook in those respects, but it's got an Intel Core i5 Ivy Bridge processor. It's a reasonably fast machine, and it costs about $500, so it's a lot cheaper than most ultrabooks. It actually has a list price of about $550, but Acer's currently offering a promotion where you can pick it up for about $499. So let's take a quick look at this guy. You can see that it's got the Core i5-3317U CPU. It's a 1.7 gigahertz CPU. Comes with 6 gigs of RAM, which is a trend I've noticed lately. We're starting to see more and more laptops coming standard with 6 gigs of RAM and not costing an arm and a leg to get it, and that's nice. In terms of your Windows Experience Index here, you've got a pretty fast processor. We've got a 6.9 score on the processor. It's the graphics that gives us this 4.8 score, where we've got a 4.8 for graphics. Gaming graphics is 4.9. Memory and hard disk are much higher scores. Acer includes Windows 7 Home Premium with this. There's an awful lot of Acer software that comes with it, most of which you probably don't need, and you can just go ahead and uninstall. There's a couple of interesting apps here, though. So, for instance, I want to take a quick look at the Clear.fi or ClearFi, or I'm not really sure how they're pronouncing it, but essentially it's a media management application, or a media player that's sort of an alternative to Windows Media Player, and which is taking a moment to load here. Here we go. So you can see that you can do music and video and play your music and media, but it also lets you share your media over a home network, so that you can use any other device on your home network and tune into songs streaming from this computer. It's supposed to work with Android applications. I had trouble getting it to work with my Android devices, but in theory it's an interesting application that lets you sort of quickly and easily stream stuff over a home network without having to do a lot of configuration. You just open up the app, say you want to stream from your Acer V5, and that's that. Other applications comes with Norton Online Backup, McAfee security, and so forth. So that's a quick look at the software, and you can see that it's a reasonably fast computer. It does things that you expect a computer to do. It's got a glossy 1366 by 768 pixel display, pretty much par for the course, and I wouldn't really expect anything different from a $500 laptop. But you can see that we do get some glare issues when you're using it in a bright setting. So let's take a quick look at some of the other features here. Let's take a look at the keyboard. It's a very comfortable island-style keyboard, which means you have a little space between these flat keys. I find that typing on it is really pretty pleasant overall, except for the arrow keys. We've got these 6 keys which are jammed into the space that you would normally expect for maybe 2 or even 1.5 keys, just below the shift key. This wouldn't be a huge problem if it was just arrow keys, but this is also what you use the function key to do the home and end, volume up, volume down, brightness controls. So it's kind of annoying that these keys are so small, and I find it's a little difficult to hit them by feel. I usually have to look down when I'm doing that. The touchpad is a clickpad style touchpad here, which means that you click in the bottom right hand corner to do a right click, but everything else you can click pretty much anywhere on the bottom half to do a left click, and you get 2 finger gestures and so forth. It's a little bit narrow, but overall, given the small space that they were working with, I think Acer did a decent job with the touchpad. I have a better experience using a plug-in mouse, but I'm a mouse kind of guy. The other thing I really kind of like about this surface area is that even though it's plastic, it feels like sturdy plastic, and if you push down pretty hard on the center, you don't get a lot of flex. There's a little bit, but not a lot of flex, and I think that's partly because it's one large piece of plastic covering everything, including the area around the keyboard. Just close it up and take a look at the sides here. We've got 2 USB 2.0 ports and a headphone jack. We've got a power adapter and a lock port. USB 3.0 port, just the one, HDMI, vent, VGA, Ethernet, and in the front there is a SD card slot. On the bottom there's what looks like one large access panel. that's held together by one screw, but I took that screw out and I really couldn't easily get the access panel to come off. So theoretically underneath this should be the RAM and the hard drive if you want to be able to do some upgrades, but you're going to have to figure out how to pry that off in order to do that, and that's something that I wasn't necessarily going to do on this demo unit which Acer loaned me and which I have to send back. The battery is a 4-cell battery which is held on using a kind of odd mechanism here where you're encouraged to use a pen or something, but you can sort of grab it with a fingernail and pull this aside while pulling the battery out, and we've got the battery. So you can see that it's a 4-cell 37 watt-hour battery, and Acer says you should be able to get up to 5 hours of battery life. In my tests I find about 4 to 4.5 is more realistic. Unfortunately there is not a larger battery option, so if you wanted a 6-cell battery or something you might have to look for a third-party battery. Acer's not going to sell one, at least not right now. So 4.5 hours isn't really great, but for a laptop that has an Ivy Bridge processor and sells for $500, you could probably do worse. The top looks like it has a brushed aluminum finish. It's really just plastic that's made to look like brushed aluminum, and it's a little bit tacky, but you know, it actually looks pretty decent, and as long as the finish doesn't erode over time, I think it should do well. And it doesn't really show fingerprints. It's not a glossy surface per se. So anyways, there you go. That's a quick look at the Acer Aspire V5. It's a $500 Ivy Bridge laptop, thin and light, ultra portable, that is not an Ultrabook, but offers very Ultrabook-like performance. One thing that it doesn't do quite as well as Ultrabooks, because of the fact that it has this hard drive instead of a solid-state drive, is boot quickly. It takes about 58 seconds to do a cold boot, but it takes just about 3 seconds to resume from sleep. So if you don't actually shut down the computer very often, you shouldn't have any real problems with that sort of speed and performance. If you really want something that you can shut down and boot to a usable desktop in 25 seconds, this might not be it. Uninstalling some of the applications that come with it might help speed up that boot speed a little bit, because I've noticed that a lot of things sort of have to load before you can get to a usable desktop. But before you even really see the Windows desktop screen at all, it's 40-45 seconds, and then you've got a little bit longer before you can really start working with it. So boot speed's not the fastest, but overall performance is pretty great, and I found that comparing it with other Ultrabooks that I've tested, including the Toshiba U845W and the Lenovo IdeaPad U310, it does just about as well on benchmarks as those laptops, but it costs substantially less. Again, Brad Linder, and a quick video review of the Acer Aspire V5 11.6-inch notebook. You can find more at lilliputiing.com.